45 members of the Miami-Dade Fire Department's Urban Search and Rescue Team. They flew out of Miami with gear and supplies and boats, other equipment to help find missing people, provide medical assistance, and more if needed.
That's Fox's Rick Leventhal in San Juan. The president has issued a disaster declaration for the island already, parts of which still trying to recover from the impact of Hurricane Maria nearly 2 years ago. Just as the hurricane season heats up, the Trump administration is shifting hundreds of millions of dollars away from disaster recovery.
The Department of Homeland Security is moving $271 million from agencies like the Coast Guard and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That money going to pay for more beds for detained migrants and to enforce a new rule that keeps asylum seekers in Mexico while their cases play out. The Coast Guard and FEMA are umbrellaed under DHS, and it's not unusual for money to be transferred between agencies. But as Tropical Storm Dorian heads towards the U.S. mainland and residents may need FEMA's help, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi calls the money transfer stunningly reckless.
Fox's Jill Nato in Washington. A person of interest is under investigation for the deaths of as many as 10 people at a Veterans Administration hospital in Clarksburg, West Virginia. One of them, 82-year-old Felix McDermott, has now been ruled a homicide victim. An autopsy found he'd been given a large dose of insulin. He was not a diabetic. Republicans in Mississippi picking Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves to run for governor against Democrat Attorney General Jim Hood in November. America is listening to Fox News.
Half-a-day, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Hulu is all your TV in one place, plus more. Watch thousands of hit shows, movies, and award-winning Hulu originals for only $5.99 per month. It's TV without the cable contract and the freedom of on-demand streaming. Get current network shows from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and binge-watch every season of your favorite cable shows. Premium Hulu viewing is brought to you by Proline Automotive and AB Sports, Guam's store for Nike. To advertise on Hulu, call Choice Digital at 989-0042.
Settlement talks are underway between another big drug company and the states suing it over the nation's opioid crisis.
Some media reports said Purdue Pharma was offering $10 to $12 billion to settle more than 2,000 lawsuits. Now, Purdue says in a statement that while they are prepared to defend the company vigorously, they see little good coming from years of litigation and appeals. They acknowledge people in communities affected by the opioid crisis need help now, so they say they're working with state attorneys general and others toward a resolution. Purdue makes the painkiller OxyContin. In the case of Johnson & Johnson, a judge in Oklahoma said the company engaged in false and dangerous marketing. Purdue has been open to settlements along the way, previously settling cases in Oklahoma for nearly $300 million. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
16 women who say they were victimized by Jeffrey Epstein spoke in federal court in New York on Tuesday, words they'll never get to say to the late sexual predator.
All I'm going to say is today is a day of power and strength.
The judge who'd been hearing the federal sex trafficking case against Epstein, inviting the women to speak at the hearing to formally dismiss the charges in the wake of Epstein's jail suicide. The company that administers the college entrance exam, replacing a score that factored in a student's background.
The College Board announcing several changes to the so-called adversity score, renaming it Landscape. It will now provide a series of reference points, like whether the applicant's high school is in a rural, suburban, or urban location, and the size of the senior class. And college admissions officers will also see a range of scores at the school to show where the potential student falls. The creation of the adversity score was an acknowledgement by colleges and universities of unequal access to high-priced tutors and courses for applications with the means to pay for them, with many schools, including elite ones, now becoming test optional. Lisa Lacera, Fox News.
In New York, I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day. This is Robert Underwood. Chamorro self-determination is the belief that the native people of Guam deserve the opportunity to express their preference for the future political status of Guam. Since the Spanish arrived and the U.S. acquired Guam in 1898, the Chamorro people have never had the chance to formally express their preference for the island's future. Supporting self-determination is something all of us who love Guam and understand its history can support. This is why I invite all of you, regardless of your background or politics, to come out on September 2nd, 8 a.m. at Adelup for Fanohgi, March for Chamorro Self-Determination. This will be a peaceful and lawful walk from Adelup to the district court. All are welcome, and it will be great for families and friends to bring signs and show their support for Chamorro self-determination. Its time has come.
Talk Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to Tall Tales for Wednesday, August 28th. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. He'll be back in 40 days. The countdown is 40. 40 days from now, we'll be enjoying the return of Bob Klitzkie to this very seat here on Tall Tales. In the meantime, I'll be keeping you company until 6 o'clock, and we'll be discussing some of the items in the news today and whatever's on your mind. Our telephone number here is 888-8255, 888-TALK. And I'd be very happy to hear from you, or you can go to us on Facebook Live or find us on YouTube as well. And so we welcome your comments, whether online or on the telephone. Did any of you see the cartoon today that featured Guam? No? It's because you didn't read the PDN.
Oh yeah, I don't subscribe to the PDN.
You know, and also not that many people look at the cartoons. And
if I did, I would. That's probably the first place I would go to.
Well, there's a cartoon series that actually the cartoon appears on the editorial page. And it's not the editorial cartoon. This is a national cartoon called Prickly City. And I'll see if I can hold it up to the camera for those of you who are watching online, and then I will read it. It's a 3-panel Prickly City. There we go. 3 panels. And it goes like this. There's 2 characters, right? And one is sitting on a rock, and the other one's walking up with a doll. And then the second panel, the doll starts to talk, and it says, "When I was campaigning in the state of Guam," and then the person sitting on the rock asks the person with the doll, "Where did you get a talking Joe Biden doll?" And then the person holding the doll says, "Remember when we were talking about how the internet could be a horrible place?" Okay, at least people are remembering that we're here and we're not just a target for Korean missiles, North Korean missiles. One of the things I'm going to be bringing to you in the next couple of days, been working on, is there's a document that's been posted recently. It's the 38th Commandant's Planning Guidance 2019. Is released in the 3rd week of July of this year. The top general in charge of the United States Marine Corps issued this document just shortly after he was appointed to the position. And he lays out his philosophy and guidance directions, basically orders, for the Marine Corps on how it's going to adjust its focus, uphold standards, new ways of doing things, new ways of cooperating, but as a member, as a an aspect of the United States Armed Forces. Very interesting. It's about 25 pages long. I didn't print it out, but I'm going to be taking some excerpts from it and bringing those to you here on Tall Tales. I've never been in the Marines. I've never actually been in uniform, and so my perspective will be that of a lifelong resident of Guam, and the special relationship between the United States Marine Corps and Guam, past, present, and future, because it's very interesting and tells us a little bit about how the top general of the commandant of the United States Marine Corps sees war fighting over the next, 6 months to 3 years, 5 years. They last about 5 years. So, and what he's going to do about it. And that's going to inform the way, it should inform the way that we see the military buildup. Because basically the buildup is about the Marines. It's not Japan Air Forces, self-defense forces being based at Andersen. It's not about deployment of Australian ships to Apple Harbor or home basing, or Japanese ships, self-defense force ships being home-based in Apple Harbor, anything like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Marines reestablishing the barracks here on Guam that we had for decades. But having much more of a modern presence. And so I'll be bringing that to you. For our Second Amendment portion of our show, there's a story in today's Guam Daily Post on page 19. Mass shooting tips to FBI surge 70% after El Paso and Dayton massacres. And while I'm reading this, I want you to consider whether the threat to our civil liberties is more on the Second Amendment or on procedural rights and from the surveillance state. Okay? It's a Reuters article. The number of calls to an FBI tip line designed to head off mass shootings and other attacks surged by 70% in the week after twin massacres in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio, federal officials said on Monday. The FBI fielded more than 38,000 phone and online tips during the week after the shootings on the first weekend of August, up from the 22,000 tips it typically receives on a weekly basis. The surge is evidence of an American public made jittery by a steady drumbeat of mass shootings. Quote, such increases are often observed after major incidents, the FBI said in a statement. As always, the FBI encourages the public to remain vigilant and report any and all suspicious activity to law enforcement immediately. FBI officials said the number of tips the center receives each week fluctuates and not all are actionable. Some tips turn into FBI investigations, while others are forwarded to local authorities. The number of FBI tips also does not include the thousands of tips that state and local law enforcement agencies have received since the shootings. According to a report published by the National Threat Assessment Center earlier this year, 3 out of every 4 perpetrators in 55 mass shootings and attacks in 2017 and 2018 made prior threats or sent messages that sparked concern. So 3 out of every 4. More than a half a dozen people have been arrested and charged across the United States in recent weeks as a result of tips, according to media and police. They have included an employee at a Wisconsin distribution center who called police after a co-worker threatened to carry out a workplace shooting, and an Alabama resident who alerted authorities after his friend, a Florida trucker, sent him messages about his plans for a shooting at a Memphis church. In Michigan, a person told authorities that a former classmate threatened to shoot 200 police officers during a phone and text conversation, while a woman in Florida told police that her ex-boyfriend texted her about his plan to kill 100 people in a mass shooting, according to police. Quote, the general public are definitely taking these more seriously, said John Mina, the sheriff in Orange County, Florida, and on the board of directors of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. Mina is no stranger to mass shootings. He was the police chief in Orlando, Florida, the night of June 12, 2016, when a gunman opened fire at the Pulse nightclub, killing 49 and wounding 53. In addition to tips resulting in arrests, law enforcement agencies in the U.S. have taken more than 20 people into custody for threats made on social media since the El Paso and Dayton shootings, according to media and police. Mina said there has been an increasing amount of resources devoted in local law enforcement agencies to access tips and threats found online, even when the person may not be serious about carrying out the attack. Quote, law enforcement has always acted upon it. The difference is now we are being a little more vocal about it, he said. Quote, agencies are pushing the message out. It's not a joke. We are going to arrest you. And this is, I bring this up because this is an appropriate response to two things. One, the prevalence of gun ownership and the increase of mass shootings. Well, there are three things. And the access to expression. One person telling another person, if it's just verbal, then the second person could report, I heard this person say that. But now, if it's done in a text message or a tweet or an email, a Facebook posting, something like that, it's persistent and can be searched and can be examined, and the person and the time, the place and time known with particularity, that could become actionable by law enforcement. And we rely on law enforcement to conduct these kinds of surveillance and vigilance on the part of on our behalf. Also, as you have seen in recent news reports, the technology for surveillance on a mass scale is being perfected in China. And while the Chinese equipment is not allowed to be installed in the United States, by and large, the concept is being proven, and it's what's to prevent American companies from reverse engineering or developing their own and building database from there. And so as an alternative to taking guns away. Second Amendment item here on Tall Tales. And it's time now for Exam-E Katni. And so thank you those of you who have tuned in so early in the program, and we have two good editorials on tap today, one from PDN and one from the Guam Daily Post. Let's start with PDN's. Gov Guam languishes far behind. Pushing forward with solar power at schools. It's been abundantly clear for years that Guam needs to turn to alternative energy, yet the government of Guam languishes far behind. The Guam Power Authority has a mandate that requires that 25% of the utility's energy be supplied by renewable technologies by 2035. The agency recently signed a 25-year, $200 million contract with Korea Electric and one with Hanwha Energy, which will add 120 megawatts of renewable energy to the island's grid. The University of Guam and Guam Community College have been ahead of the curve, using solar power to reduce their energy bills. The plan was to have the Guam Department of Education do the same. But 6 years after a law was passed to allow the education agency to enter into solar power purchase agreements, public schools are still no closer to harnessing the power of the sun. Quote, I would love to be able to save 20 to 30% in power costs. Education Superintendent John Fernandez said, Guam DOE spends about $12 million a year on power, which would translate into a savings of $2.5 to $3.5 million each year, he said, money which could be used to purchase textbooks or provide maintenance at campuses. Two senators believe an amendment to the 2013 law could speed up the process for public schools so they could lower their electricity cost. The problem is the job of awarding contracts, which was given to the General Services Agency, which has a history of doing things slowly and often doing it wrong. If Bill 196 becomes law, Guam DOE would be able to seek technical consultation with the Guam Power Authority at no cost to the Education Agency and move forward with power purchase agreements. Under the law, I'm not sure if it's the law or the bill. Under the law, qualified power providers are responsible for providing solar power to cover no more than 80% of the power needs of Guam DOE schools, Guam DOE administrative buildings, and ancillary buildings. But why stop at 20%? Why not let schools maximize savings by relying on solar power? The more that's saved, the more funding is available for keeping schools repaired and providing an adequate education to our children. Anyone who's been listening to me knows I'm going to nitpick. I'm going to call out the writer for not taking it to the next logical step. And that is, this is real money. It's coming out of real taxes. We're paying real money to, our taxes go to the budget goes to DOE. DOE has a plan on how to spend the money. Some of it is in utilities. And even GPA is counting on that money because it knows how much money DOE needs to power its schools and whatnot. And not every school is going to be able to contribute economically as far as the cost of the installation and the size of the school and the return to investment horizon on the equipment that's installed. But they haven't started in 6 years. So where does this article fall short? One, let's see. Public schools are still no closer to harnessing the power of the sun. How about public schools are still no closer to saving taxpayer money for priorities? And 2 senators believe an amendment to the 2013 law could speed up the process for public schools so they could lower their electricity costs. The problem is the job of awarding contracts, which was given to GSA, which has a history of doing things slowly and often doing it wrong. We know this. Why would 2 senators be focusing on an exemption for DOE when, if you can identify the problem with GSA, everyone's having this problem, solving that problem? Why are Band-Aids better than necessary surgery? That is just missing the mark so badly. I agree totally with the sentiment, but there's no solution put here that's any more than just a superficial Band-Aid approach. Let's Band-Aid this, and they don't even call out the Director of Education for not pushing this through. Consider if the law was passed 6 years ago, and it would take another 2 years or so to understand why they can't implement it. That puts it at 4 years ago. And then let's say that it took a year to get contracts let. So that's 3 years ago. So we could have been getting savings starting 2 years ago. And it would be reflected in the 2018, the 2019, and the upcoming 2020 budgets. So that's $2.5 to $3.5 million a year that could have been used for textbooks, maintenance, whatever the priorities are that they can't, that they've been dropping off the priority list because they can't, they have to pay the power bill. So I think I'm just looking for people to step up and do their jobs. You know, whether it's an editor or a senator, or education superintendent, or even the OPA, because the OPA oversees the efficiency of the GSA, since it's the appeals venue for complaints about how the way they do things. So that was the PDN editorial today. On the same subject, power plant contract needs scrutiny. Island needs long-term energy plan. And this is the Guam Daily Post editorial today. As soon as this week, the Consolidated Commission on Utilities could decide on the proposed contract for a new power plant the Guam Power Authority has been working on for the last several years. The CCU functions as GPA's board, so we might not see a lot of vigorous and healthy skepticism or devil's advocacy from the Commission on behalf of ratepayers and the rest of the public. But ratepayers and the general public do need to understand in simple terms the nuts and bolts of this proposed contract before it becomes final. This is potentially a $400 million power plant by GPA's prior estimates. It also represents a $3 billion, quote, net present value over the 25 to 30-year term to the winning bidder, which in all likelihood is a partnership led by South Korea's Korea Electric Power. The Power Authority's future supply stability rides on the approval of this contract. We hope that at the Public Utilities Commission's rate regulatory level, the PUC commissioners will scrutinize and vet the terms of the contract and compare them with the claims GPA has made in pitching the new power plant idea to the public. We also need senators and Governor Lou Leon Guerrero's administration to look at the proposed contract and tell us what they think it would mean for ratepayers. And if they have concerns, hopefully they'll tell us or pause the proposed deal until issues can be resolved or doubts can be laid to rest. The cost of electricity and a stable power supply affect all of us. When big generators fail, businesses, schools, restaurants, offices, and water pumps shut down, and it disrupts our way of life. And we can't route emergency power from a neighboring state. The cost of electricity on Guam takes a big chunk out of a low to middle income household's monthly budget. Businesses get hit with additional major costs when GPA raises the base rate portion of the contract or the fuel surcharge components of the contract. There are certain important variables that have changed since GPA pitched the idea of one massive power plant for the island. This power plant would still be powered initially by ultra-low sulfur diesel. The proposed power plant can also be fueled by liquefied natural gas, but LNG infrastructure isn't in place on Guam and won't be for years. One of the biggest changes in GPA's pitch is this. The base rate portion of a customer's power bill isn't going to decrease. This is contrary to GPA's claim just a few years ago that the new power plant would lower the base rate. For an average residential bill, the cost of the base rate would increase by an estimated 11.8% or by $10.80 to $102.06 in 2023, the year 2023, according to GPA General Manager John Beneventi's recent presentation to the CCU. His presentation also showed the fuel surcharge on an average customer's monthly residential bill would decrease by $29.48. This would mean a net decrease of 8% or $18.68 on an average monthly power bill. GPA added that liquefied natural gas is anticipated to be in use possibly by 2026, leading to a savings increase of $40 to $45 million. These are pretty optimistic projections, considering that fuel prices have been erratic and are subject to world events and market disruptions. GPA's optimism, in part, is based upon the new plant's greater fuel efficiency. These are all good, if not surprising, things to hear. It is, after all, GPA's job to continue to market the new power plant. We need elected officials to advocate for the interest of the ratepayers and the public by looking closely at the details of this proposed deal and how assumptions incorporated into it were made. We also hope that senators and the governor's office will be proactive in helping to craft a new and comprehensive long-term energy plan for the island, a policy that takes into account island residents' growing desire to rely less on GPA and more on solar and other solutions that let consumers choose whether to stay with GPA. Now it's 4:30, so we're going to take a break here, and I'll come right back with the analysis of the Guam Daily Post editorial for today. Take it away, Joe.
65 years ago, Bank Pacific opened its doors to our community. As we celebrate, we offer you a special 65th anniversary personal loan rate for as low as 4.65% for travel, back to school, a wedding. Do whatever you want with the money. We just want to give it to you for as low as 4.65% APR. It's our birthday present to you.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC, conditions apply.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
What is the whole thing about finding one's purpose in life? Is it really that big of a deal? A lot of people think so, but maybe we should take a closer look. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about our purpose.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255. And now, sitting in for the vacationing Bob Klitzkie, here's Daryl Taggarty.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. Before the break, we were talking about the Guam Daily Post editorial. Appears on page 24 of today's post. And I am going to take issue with this as well. When the editorial board or editor-writer says, we also need Senators and Governor Lulian Guerrero's administration to look at the proposed contract and tell us what they think it would mean for ratepayers. And if they have concerns, hopefully they'll tell us or pause the proposed deal until issues can be resolved or doubts laid to rest. These editors are forgetting that when the legislature and governor together took themselves out of the governance of GPA by passing a law that made it an autonomous agency under the CCU, and the CCU is elected by us. They took themselves out of it so that you would not have political pressure or pressure from more highly political representatives of us, the people, weighing in on the decisions of the CCU. The CCU represents us. And if you don't like the way that the CCU operates, then you need to pay better attention to the people that you're voting for. Or we need to get some people on the CCU that are going to represent us better. If you've given up on the CCU representing us, GPA is supposed to advocate for itself. I'll give you one example. You know, we're talking about this big, beautiful, shiny new power plant to be bid out for someone to build and operate this thing, like the other power plants that we have down in Cabras. We've basically turned over the function of building and operating a power plant to somebody else, while GPA just manages the process and operates the grid. Oh, let's get rid of my red eye here. Operates the distribution of power on the island and handles the public, issues of concern to the public, because the CCU represents us for water and power policy instead of the legislature. So you know that plant up there up above NCS Beach, right? You know the spot. Well, back in 1982, it was shown that because the northern treatment plant for the for wastewater, the northern plant's been doubled in size, but in 1982, it was determined to be cost effective to operate a turbine from the discharge of that wastewater plant, the water going to the ocean. And nothing has been done about this. It's not part of their plan. It's not part of any plan. Even though, how many years is that? 38 years ago? It was studied, proven under the first Calvo administration, Paul Calvo's administration. It was studied and shown to be economic. With technology from back then, and technology in turbines, water turbines, hasn't changed. You know, there might be some changes in environmental and siting and stuff like that. But it's not that big a deal. And we even have, the pipe is already coming down. There's even a GPA facility down there at the site of the old power plant where it could go. You know, just run the pipe over there and let it, I don't know, however they do it, right? Let it happen. But no, that's not part of it. Here's another point that they make. They talk about the PUC. The PUC is going to examine whether the proposal, even if it is already approved by the CCU, whether the proposal passes technical muster, whether they're really getting the best deal based on what's available in the market worldwide, and the outlook for fuels, and the cost of putting an LNG line in, just like they pump the fuel from the port to the power plant up there at Tangisen. Now they're extending it over to the site of the new plant to send the oil up by pipeline instead of by truck. And then you're going to put an LNG line in all the way from there up, or they're going to truck it by tanker truck up there. You know, this is the sort of thing that the PUC would look at as a technical matter. Technical experts will examine. And they are protecting our interest in that side, but they're not elected. They're appointed and approved. And they do their job well. But they're not they're not supposed to be political. So when the editorial board here says we need elected officials to advocate for the interest of the ratepayers and the public by looking closely at the details of this proposed deal and how assumptions incorporated into it were made, yes. And we also hope that senators and the governor's office will be proactive in helping to craft a new and comprehensive long-term energy plan for the island. A policy that takes into account island residents' growing desire to rely less on GPA and more on solar and other solutions that let consumers choose whether to stay with GPA. No. They're supposed to call the CCU and call John Beneventi in and say, deliver your plan, how this is all supposed to work. We want to see it in black and white, and then we're going to have our say, because if you're not serving us right, we could just, what? We're going to take away your autonomy? What are they going to do? All they can do is call them in and say, you have a plan, show us your plan. And then they can point fingers at the CCU and go, you guys should know better than to do this. If there's really something wrong, maybe it all hangs together. But don't ask them to act, because the ones who are going to act are the ones that we elected on the CCU. So remember that next time you hear, let's see, Simon Sanchez or Judy Guthertz, or who else is there? I think former Senator Lim Tiaco is there now. If you know them, buttonhole them. Ask them what they're doing to represent us. But don't expect the senators downtown or the governor to step in on this. It wouldn't even be healthy for them to do that. It wouldn't be healthy for the way that they set up the utility and insulated it from them. by law. It would be a mistake. And so no star for the Post and no star today for the PDN on Zami Ikatni for Wednesday the 28th. Sorry, Charlie. Need better from you guys. There's a caller on line 1. Let's see what's going on. Oh, it's Tom. Hey, Tom.
How are you?
Hey, man. I finished my coffee already before I came in. I'm not sucking it down as I go.
Like nobody got the blue star today?
No. They got to do better than that. You know,
Right, yeah.
it's not like I have lots of blue ink to throw around.
That's right. I do not blame you for not giving out any blue star. But here's what I need you to remember, though, is that we cannot have the legislature down there in Agana debate on issues like how are they going to build the power plant, how much it's going to cost, and which contractors should get this, because the lawmakers down there are not really technicians, they're not technical experts on this matter. As long as we can control the CCU, when it comes to salaries and bonuses, because look what happened when Bob Klitzkie corrected their mistake of giving the pay raise with in a closed door session, which is in violation of the law. We caught them in that, so they went ahead and rescinded that pay raise and bonuses, right? So if we can control that part of the races when it comes to money, when it comes to our taxpayers' money or ratepayers' money, I think we can let the CCU do the other part about negotiating, because I think they're doing a good job when it comes to the LIAC. They lower the LIAC and increase the LIAC depending on the fluctuation of the crude oil prices, right, in Singapore.
That's how they do it, yeah.
They're doing a good job on that part, and I think they're doing a good job of finding out how much it will cost to build this power plant and versus other design of power producing apparatus. What do you think?
Well, I think that they've really forgotten that there was a hydropower opportunity that has existed ever since that northern wastewater treatment plant was built. And that plant was recently doubled in size. It's something like 18 million gallons goes through that thing a day. I don't know, something. It's just an incredible amount of water that it's everything that's gathered in the sewer system that's sent there has to come out of there and down to the ocean after the treatment. That water falls about 300 feet. And when you can drop that amount of water down 300 feet, you can put a turbine in there and generate power. It's in the electricity industry, it's a no-brainer. It's something that it's like a free renewable that you can use. And there has been no consideration of this.
I did not know that there's water dropping from 300 feet. Where did the 300 feet started?
How high is the northern wastewater treatment plant?
That's over in Tangisan, right? Are you
right on the top of the cliff, right? And then it's how many feet above sea level?
Also, there's a sewer line on top of the cliff, and the sewer drops down 300 feet
to the ocean. The discharge. All the sewage water from the northern half of the island, including the one that's diverted to go north from the center, is sent to the northern treatment plant instead of to Agana. And that water is up there it's all sitting there at the treatment plant up there above Tangisan Beach. And when they're done with it, treating it, it's sent down the pipe to the ocean. That falling water is 300 feet.
Now I understand. But now the question is, will there be enough liquid dropping down there to spin a turbine enough to create power?
It's all liquid. The solids are removed.
Yeah, but will it have enough force to spin a turbine that can create so much electricity in the generator part of the turbine.
Tom, you ever seen one of those, water park? They have the water coming down?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it doesn't take much water, right, to put enough to slide people down, right? But how about if you have a pipe that's about 6 feet high and it's just gushing water all the time?
Yeah, okay, yeah, you're correct. That's something that we can investigate then. So you're saying that the CCU should have thought about that to produce power from that source?
It should have been part of GPA's overall plan, like 20-year plan or whatever, especially when they started doing the renewables and they put out those big contracts for the solar farm. They put a windmill up on Windward Hills. They put, they got batteries going in at the old Agania power plant up there in Mighty. All of these things, right? But what happened to the hydroelectric power?
Yeah. Okay.
And we already have, when they started talking about, and the CCU is the same board that handles the wastewater treatment and the policy on how to make that economical and to the designs. It's a different general manager, but it's the same board. And why they can't think of these things on our behalf, we elected them. Why do they not think of these things as they are examining the presentations by the GM of Waterworks and the GM of Power? And I think John Beneventi's been there since this report came out. He's been there like 40 years. There's no reason for him to be ignorant of this.
So they never investigated the feasibility of producing something like that over at Tangisan where...
Yes, there's a report.
They have to weigh the cost of producing that power plant versus how much electricity it can produce.
There was a study done, I don't know, sometime between 1982 and 1985. I found the reference in a book of documents that were produced and are on file from that period of Government of Guam studies. I found it as leafing through it, and boom, there it was. From a book I picked up on the stuff that's in the library. You can go and check this thing out. I think at Guam Energy Office over there by Public Works. Yeah, I mean, if I can find it, why can't they find it?
I'm going to have to do that. I like to read.
Perhaps I'll take that section of the reference and I'll go ahead and copy it off and post it, because this is the kind of thing. It shouldn't take us in the public to remind them what their job is, or to remind them what their options are. They should be the subject matter experts for us. And if the technical people inside don't remember, the CCU is supposed to know. And if the CCU doesn't know, the PUC should remind them.
Yeah, but on the other hand, though, I'm just worried about giving total control of our power system and our water system down to the lawmakers down there at the Congress building.
Oh, no.
Because as of right now, they cannot even stop arguing about the budget.
No.
Let alone trying to figure out what is the best renewable energy that we can construct for the people of Guam.
They have no business doing that. When the last time I worked at the legislature, we had oversight over the utilities. The senator I worked for had the committee that had oversight on the utilities. And I used to go to the CCU meetings and sit there, and it was boring unless it was something interesting, right? And you're not looking for fireworks. You're just looking for discussions of things that are truly important. And there's a lot of things that they're doing that are important. I don't minimize that at all, but we knew just on day one that no matter what I bring back from the meeting for information for the chair of the committee, all we had power to do was to call them out and ask them to clarify for the public. Come to the legislature in a hearing, explain this, please. Not that we're going to do anything about it. We're not doing anything about it, but explain it to our satisfaction. And that's why I was faulting the writer of the Guam Daily Post editorial for not knowing this, because we've had some bad experiences in the past with the senators tripping over each other, trying to figure out how to get credit for cutting down the power bills and starving GPA of the money it needed. Now we have to worry about the CCU not really looking out for the public, but just acting as if it's as if they are the owners of a utility and nobody can touch them, and we're going to pay the bills. They're like they own a company, and it has nothing to do with the public. That's the problem. And it shouldn't. If that pendulum swings that far over, somebody's got to call them back and say, you don't work for yourselves. You answer to the public. So now here's the question. Now you answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tom?
Anyway, before the music comes on.
Yeah. Yeah, his finger's on the button, man.
Anyway, in case the music comes on, I'll hang on until after the break, okay?
Well, you want me to start singing? The music is on. Okay, so hang on, because we're past the time of our break, and hang on, we'll be right back with you, Tom, here on Tall Tales.
World Theater Productions presents Mamma Mia at the UOG Calvo Fieldhouse on September 6, 7, and 8. See local and international artists in the biggest on-stage party of the season.
Half a day. This is AJ Raphael.
And Didi Magno Hall. Come and see us in Mamma Mia.
Also presented by Dusatani Guam Resort, Outrigger Guam Beach Resort, and the Plaza Shopping Center. Get your tickets now at WTPGuam.com, GNC, and 76 Circle K.
Are you ready for some football? The Ray Gibson Show has got your NFL fix every Friday on Sports with Blake. Be a part of the action by going to yahoo.com's Fantasy Sports Pro Football Pick'em. Join League 3384 with the password Ray Gibson. Choose your team name and get your game on. Winners get a chance to win some awesome prizes that get you through the NFL season. The NFL Picks on the Ray Gibson Show is brought to you by Current Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
And welcome back to Tall Tales. We've been talking with Tom about our concerns about the how well the CCU is doing its job and whether the legislature should be involved at all. Tom, let's continue.
Have you ever gone up to Nimitz Hill, the top of Nimitz Hill, where the Japanese cave up there at the very top? Have you ever gone up there?
Top
from Maina going up to the very top.
You're talking about you walk in from the Comnav Mars side? Or there's one behind the power substation. There's one that was a depression. It was a cave I think it was like a hospital, and they just kind of blasted it shut. And then there's the other ones that have the cemented doors, cement entrances where they have you can. It almost looks like a quarry.
Cave, right?
Yeah, it's the entrance to the caves has a cement entrance. Yeah.
Anyway, if you were to drive up there and you just shut your car off and listen, if there's no traffic, you can hear it. But there's a waterfall right there on your left as you're facing up the hill. It's a waterfall that drops down about 300 feet. So that's a very high drop. I've been back there, and I look down, and it's a very steep drop, at least 300 feet. And if they can dam the river there, that's where the South River gets its water source from the top of Nimitz Hill. If they can dam that up there, and they can produce another hydroelectric power plant at that site.
Well, there's actually the technology is there for micro hydro sites, but all water courses, everywhere that there's a river that's flowing, is a domain of the Army Corps of Engineers in these here United States. So you can't do anything even down at, what's that river, the one that runs so slowly down in Agate? And before you get to the marina. The name escapes me. Uhang? Yeah, you know that area there? But as soon as the water starts coming down off that, you get a big cloud burst up on that up on the mountain behind Agate.
Yeah.
And then it's like 50 miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
Coming down through the flat. It just comes through. Flash flooding is the name of the game down there. And so anything you do on a river course has to have Army Corps approval. And some of that land is Navy, some of it is...
How do you pronounce that? Navigating rivers.
No, all water. All water courses.
Even if it's not
navigable?
In that word.
Navigable.
Navigable.
Yeah, navigatable.
Navigable.
So even if it's not navigable, Army
you got it.
You have to be involved.
Army Corps, yes.
Yeah.
And so when you, especially, that's probably a spring. That's probably a spring. The water falls up there on the top, and it's got some coral, and so the water is held in the geologic formations, which are like a bowl, and then as the excess water falls out, it makes a waterfall. There's already one there. That was the dam that was built to supply Agana with water under the early in the American time. That's that the red brick spillway to the head. What they do is they put a dam to have a good collection point for the pipe, and then it fell down to Agana and supplied the Agana with water. It was always under pressure because of all the water in the pipe. So there was also an idea about one of the rivers in the south being used as a put a dam and then have it be the one to push to put a turbine. There are other ideas, like you have the water flowing past the island with the regular ocean currents, and that was also an idea. All these technologies have been investigated to some extent here on Guam, mostly in Hawaii, for proof of concept and the cost of the technology. And they're not as cost effective, especially with our storms. They're not as cost effective. The outlook for these things surviving is not the same as other technologies. And so I think when we go to solar, we go to wind, we go to like the hydro turbine for the outfall of the sewer system, which is up 300 feet in the air. These and we already know how much is going in. We know how much is going to come out. So these kinds of technologies are already mature.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's surprising that they don't look at those more closely. Oh, Tom, the other day, did you hear when I mentioned that Robert Underwood invited you to give him a call?
Oh yes, but I don't want to talk to him personally on a one-to-one basis because I want the people who want to hear what we talk about. And I just don't want him to hear my voice by himself. I want people to hear my argument with him, my debate with him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just have a one-to-one conversation.
You could talk to him and come back and report your conversation.
I'll be down there December 2nd.
I will look for you.
I'll have a chance.
If you want to look for me, you know what I look like.
Yeah.
I think I know what you look like.
I've never met you personally.
You sure? Did you used to work at Adelup? At Central Files?
I have a bad memory due to my Vietnamese.
Maybe you didn't, but anyway, nice to meet you on the radio.
All right.
It's
see you there.
Yep, see you there. It's 4:59, time to make way for Fox News and our great halftime show. The band and the marching unit is ready and raring to go. So stay tuned for that coming up in just a few moments. And when on the other side, I'll be here and we'll talk more here on Tall Tales.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Puerto Rico prepares for another pounding. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. What is now Tropical Storm Dorian gaining strength as it moves closer to the island.
The storm is moving across the Caribbean Sea at some 13 miles an hour with maximum sustained winds at 50 miles per hour, and it's headed right for the island of Puerto Rico, expected to strengthen overnight and be at or near hurricane strength when it passes over or near this island.
Fox's Rick Leventhal in San Juan, where they're still cleaning up from Hurricane Maria nearly 2 years ago. The worst of Dorian now expected by mid-afternoon. A hurricane watch posted in Puerto Rico. Tropical storm warnings for Vieques, Calibra, the Virgin Islands, and parts of the Dominican Republic. Current forecast models have the storm hitting Florida this weekend. Attorneys general from 40 different states now in talks with Purdue Pharma for a possible multi-billion-dollar settlement for their claims against the maker of OxyContin for the national opioid epidemic. Florida Senator Rick Scott telling Fox News at Night.
The right thing to would happen here is these companies would step up. They'd say, we're going to figure out how to help stop the abuse. We're going to help put money in for rehabilitation. And we're going to figure out how we can compensate the families that have lost their loved ones. That's what ought to happen here.
Purdue says it's ready to vigorously defend itself, but says in a statement it believes that a constructive global resolution is the best path forward. Purdue had previously settled with the state of Oklahoma. President Trump's longtime bank forced to reveal it does have the tax records that Congress is seeking in its investigation of the president's finances. But in responding to a federal court order, Deutsche Bank not saying if the returns it has are the president's, his company's, or one of his children's. They are all suing to stop the subpoenas from 2 congressional committees. Asian stocks closing Wednesday mixed. Dow futures are trading about 75 points higher after a down day on Wall Street that saw all 3 major U.S. indices close lower. America is listening to Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Kelaguen Hapa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mezcla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
The Department of Veterans Affairs says it's investigating allegations of potential wrongdoing resulting in multiple patient deaths at a VA hospital in West Virginia. The daughter of a Clarksburg VA patient who died last year says an autopsy showed her father died after an insulin injection. He was not diabetic. There was evidence as many as 10 other patients died in similar fashion. A judge has issued an order temporarily blocking Missouri's ban on most abortions at or after 8 weeks of pregnancy, while a lawsuit against it plays out in the courts. The ban includes exceptions for medical emergencies for the mother, but none for rape or incest. Planned Parenthood and the American Civil Liberties Union in Missouri both arguing that law is unconstitutional. Iran rejecting the idea of direct talks with the United States over its nuclear development.
These hoped-for negotiations went from something to nothing in less than 24 hours. Iran's president now says there won't be any meetings with President Trump until the U.S. removes all economic sanctions against Tehran. In his televised address, President Hassan Rouhani said he is not interested in a photo op, and it's up to Washington to decide what happens next.
Without America withdrawing from sanctions and abandoning the wrong path it has chosen, we will not witness any positive development.
Rouhani also vowed that Iran will continue to scale back its commitments in the 2015 nuclear agreement. This all comes a day after the Iranian president suggested he was open to negotiations.
That's Fox's Garrett Tenney. In the midst of the trade war with China, a huge store opening in Beijing yesterday. That's what it sounded like as Costco opened its first store in China. That audio from Weibo.com. Costco forced to close the store's doors just a few hours later as bargain hunters swamped the store picked up lots of bargains. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, mom, dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Parents, start your child's school year right with healthiness and fun. Complete your child's immunizations, annual physical, dental, or eye exam at FHP and receive a free gift for each exam visit. Perfect for back to school. Valid from July 15 to August 31st or while supplies last. Visit their website or Facebook page for more details. Call 646-5825 and press 2 to schedule an appointment today. Most private insurance accepted. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, inviting you to try their garlic roasted Dungeness crab, featuring 2 pounds of Dungeness crab, marinated with a secret garlic sauce and served with special chow mein noodles. Visit Mezcla in Agaya and now in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
Welcome back to Tall Tales for the second half of Tall Tales here on The Point. I'm Daryl Taggarty, sitting in for Bob Klitzkie. He'll be back in 40 days. And we're just kicking around some of the stories that we've been enjoying today in our news locally. Let me take a look at what's shaking on the Facebook Live page. I've got, let's see, Catherine Tyron is watching. And so is Stephen Durking. Hi. Happy to see your name there, Stephen. I'm happy to see you there. And my heart always leaps when I hear your name or Kamia's name. It's just it's one of those special parts in my coming through this world. So thank you. Good to see you there. And let's see. Elwin Catano has a few comments. He says, I agree with you, Daryl. Greater fiscal discipline and new forms of savings, better maintenance and removal of unnecessary positions are urgently needed throughout Gov Guam. I was talking about the opportunity that's been passed up by Guam DOE. The largest portion of the budget is DOE. And for 6 years, they haven't moved on the authority to implement solar power, and they only need the power during the day, right? I mean, sometimes at nighttime they need power, but the big load is during the day. And if they can't do that, and they could also be generating power to sell back to GPA or to help the load for the homes and businesses and nearby the schools. But, I guess that's a bit complicated. There should be somebody who can help them out with that. He also continues saying, senators need to introduce bills that would open up greater opportunities for private power and water providers. For example, allow community wells not run by GPA to be developed. Everyone can be served and savings for taxpayers can be made. This was brought up by one of our regular callers about what is the regime, the water regime for Guam. And that was one of those things I wanted to research and bring to you. What is a water regime? How is water ownership set up on Guam? And it is, I remember seeing this before, looking at this before. So as soon as I go back over it again, I'll recognize where I was before. And I'll be right with you on line 1. Hang on. Dave, hang on, okay? And then he also says, the CCU board members are there for themselves. Take a close look how Francis Santos, a CCU board member, takes good care of brother-in-law Bordallo, Michael Bordallo. I know both these gentlemen. I know them by reputation. I know them by their works. I know them how they are when they're around me. I don't know them how they are. I don't know how they are around other people. I just know how they are around me. So, yeah, that is a point, and others have made that point. Elwin continues, by giving him a nice position, GWA GM, and giving him a raise and sending all water business to his friends. Don't know about that part. I do know that it's he didn't need to take the position as GM of water to have a good life. I spoke with him man to man before he took the position. It was a challenge. He thought he could do something better. And if you look, I've been involved with GWA only peripherally as assisting in the installation of some telemetry equipment for new water tanks and whatnot. I've spoken to some of the people in there to kind of get an idea of how it's changed from the last time I was working peripherally with GWA on engineering or, policy matters. And it's a big improvement. It doesn't go down as far as some of the places that are more visible and maybe of more concern to us. And that's where the CCU is supposed to be drilling down and giving that man some help. And he also, GWA does not have, it's not as advanced in its operations and its policies as an agent, as a utility, as GPA. And it really should be adopting some, or the CCU should be requiring it to adopt some of those same technologies and procedures having to do with billings and finance and whatnot, operations. It's like night and day. It's like twins, like fraternal twins, or half brother instead of full brother. It's not pretty over there. And then Elwin Catano continues, ocean current turbines. Yeah, not a proven technology, and we might chop up a few frogmen doing it, so I think that's a problem. Oh, we lost our caller on line 1. Oh, maybe he'll come back. Dave, call back if you can. I just got done with my comments here. And Sherry Uriarte says hi. Hi. I don't want to make a joke about this, but I almost did. Whether you are an Uriarte by marriage or by grandparents, because I'm an Uriarte by grandparents. And Uriarte is not that big of a family, even if you're from Pohnpei. Same Uriarte. Okay, while we're waiting for Dave to call back, let's go on here. Interesting stuff on today's paper about Guam having a second dengue case. And I thought I was just the other day reading about how it's not a dengue case. And now we've got 2. I'm kind of getting whiplash here. I'm not going to get into this except to point out that we have identified here the Guam territorial epidemiologist, Ann Pobutsky. Ann Pobutsky is the person in the government of Guam who is responsible for compiling the information some of which is confidential. But when you compile it and you make statistics out of it, then that information is sufficiently aggregated away from individuals so you can have action on it. So she's the one who's going to be the one advising the government to call for a public health emergency. Or, you know, if there's rabies or if there's whatever, or there's too many opioids being sold. The epidemiologist would know by the category of treatments that are being done, not only at GMH, but even by private providers. Got Francis on line 1 here at Tall Tales. Welcome to Tall Tales.
Hey, when's that Marine coming back?
Oh, you know, 40 days. 40 days, that's
40
the
days?
countdown. Yep.
So he'll be back before the holidays. Anyway, you have Iriarty blood in you?
Yes, I do. My mother was Rosa Iriarty Borja.
Bro, that's whole family here in the Ganais, plus the whole part of the Manaite, the Garidus.
Yes.
Man, real big family. So there's Iriarty and Panapay?
The Iriarty, the story that I understand, is that the Iriarty brothers were Basque insurgents, separatists, active fighting the Spanish government back in the 1880s, 1870s, 1880s, and they were rotting in jail. And when the Spanish government got tired of feeding them and you know, hosing them down, they said, well, you know, if you want, you can go join the Spanish army and we'll send you out to the Pacific, to our territories out there. You can't go to the Philippines because that would be too cushy, but we'll send you to Guam or someplace like that. So they said, sure. So they got him in uniform and they sent him out here. And then the governor here said, I can't have all 4 of you brothers armed and here. So he sent one to Pohnpei. He sent one, I think, to Palau or Yap and somewhere else. So the 4 brothers, each one, when they finished their obligation to the Spanish crown, they married locally.
Wow, man, what a beautiful story, man.
Yeah. And so, and my mom, when she was, after she ran away from her job with Japanese during World War II, right? She was hiding out at the ranch over in Barragata, and the late over there in the back, where's the golf course, right? And the late Belle Areola said that she remembers my mom and her grandfather and the location where the ranch was. And I lost a little, she wrote it on a little Post-it about, okay, this is how they were laid out, and this was where I was, and this is where your mom was, and all that. You know, it was a lot of fun to hear. And and you know, the other notable Iriarty that I've been familiar with closely for how many years now is John Witt, because he's an Iriarty Witt. His mom is Iriarty.
It's not Wick, is it?
Witt, W-H-I-T-T.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, long time.
Good, Daryl, sounds good, man. Hey, listen, I wanted to talk to you about something, but maybe I'll hold on to it tomorrow because we're just coming out of the jungle here, and we'll get comfortable and talk to you. Yeah, we have to...
I'm glad you're calling from the jungle. That's too cool.
Let me tell you something, man. There's a million pigs up there in the mountain, even in Agate.
It's all meat on the hoof, you know, fresh.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to set up something here for roast a couple of those guys, man. So, you know. Anyway, I'll talk to you tomorrow, man.
Yeah, please call back. Be looking forward to your call.
My code, Daryl.
Sure, anytime. Thanks, Francis. And so, yeah, you know, the ties are deep here. The history is deep. Families and people who come from other places, they know they have the same depth in their families from where they originated. And so sometimes it's not acknowledged publicly, you know, openly, because, you know, we don't want to make people feel bad, but, you know, there is a deep history here. And those of us who are getting on in years, remember it only now through what we were told by our parents. and by our uncles and aunts. And our cousins, when they, get together and say, oh, yeah, Nana said this. So, that's all going to come out in the years to come, as more of these stories are collected. It's too bad we didn't collect them more, but I know my mom didn't want to tell her stories to anybody. Even with them, I tried to record her on a reel-to-reel. She didn't want. She just wanted me to listen. So, but anyway, we now have a territorial epidemiologist who's been identified. So at some point, we're going to have to bug her for her, she's being paid by the people of Guam. And so bug her for her perspective. Because this is an informed, educated, responsible position in the government of Guam to tell us just what is the state of health on Guam. And this is another thing I'm going to bring to you. I'm gonna put together this little monologue on healthcare. You've heard in national discussions and local discussions by politicians who stand and wring their hands and they say, oh, healthcare is a right. And then somebody else will jump up and they'll be citing from the Organic Act about the governor's responsibility to provide healthcare. I'm going to put together a sort of a short statement on how you can, to help you understand how these pieces fit together and why it's so important by the way that we fund health care and deliver health care on this island. And it'll help as you hear the stories about GRMC and public health and immigration and who's paying for what, Medicare and all this good stuff, okay? But not today. Just let you know, coming attractions. But just remember that name, Ann Pobutsky, the territorial epidemiologist. Also, we see today on page 1 of the Guam Daily Post that the 75th Liberation festivity expenses have been released. And I read the article, and I'm happy for the information, and I say good, because I think it was just yesterday or the day before I was saying, gosh, we're going to have to wait until October before they release anything. But no, they released it. But here's my question. I mean, I can't tell from the article, and I don't have a hyperlink on the online edition that says, here's the documents they released. And I would really like for both newspapers to do that. Post the source documents online so we can read it ourselves and interpret it for ourselves. Because we got a brain too. So, my question is, how much was needed for the carnival? How much for the fireworks? How much for the parade? Now, we got in the article how much for the fireworks, right? But just think, these are the three cost components of the Liberation Day activities. The carnival, which involves setting up a site and buying, paying for security and porta potties and stringing power and trash collection and whatnot, right? And paying for entertainment. Okay. Was the casino approval really necessary? By how much was it necessary? Now, you can't tell from the article today. But was it necessary to avoid having to put those costs out by an appropriation? And by how much? And the reason I say, what was the cost of the carnival? Because if you didn't have the carnival, then the expenses, the income and expenses of the parade might have been something that we wouldn't have minded spending. How much money had to be spent in the casino in order to generate $400-some thousand in payments? You can say, was that 10%? Was that 8%? So $4 million flushed through the carnival? And also, is that amount net of the cost of enforcement? Didn't we have revenue tax personnel that had to be on the scene? And do we say these amounts, whatever we got in, these amounts go to offset revenue tax's cost of having to have a warm body with a brain and eyes open and pencil sharp? on the scene the whole time when they're open? Somebody who could actually, represent the interests of the people of Guam in a technical way? A GovGuam employee was placed there. So the whole time that the casino was open and the betting games outside were open, somebody was watching all those activities, maybe two people watching all those activities. And then there's a supervisor and an accountant, to do the bookkeeping stuff. So there's 4 people. So over 40 days or whatever it was, what was that cost? And then we have to, even if it's not something that was already budgeted for and paid for, but they were diverted from their regular duties to do that. And so we need to take the amount of money that was received in fees charged to those activities that we were overseeing and separate out that amount of money. Because you and I, of the public, lost the services of those employees from their regular jobs so that they could watch the gambling side. And so it's a net amount. So these are the kinds of questions that I think need to be answered when we find out that the Liberation festivity expenses have been released. We should be able to see those because it's a bigger question than simply, okay, here's the sheet. This is what we know. Because actually some of that report has to come out of revenue tax for their own expenses. The dengue fever case and the discussion about the knowing the territorial epidemiologist. The reason I was interested in the territorial epidemiologist, identifying that person, was because of a series of articles that we've seen over the last week, 10 days, about the TB skin test. So in today's Daily Post, there's a story about the continuing nationwide shortage of Aplisol, a product of PAR Pharmaceuticals, used for tuberculin skin tests. And so the government of Guam is adjusting testing requirements for people who need health certificates based on people seeking a health certificate, such as restaurant and store workers, will complete the TB risk assessment for occupational staff to determine if there is an immediate need for the testing. If a person has TB symptoms or risk factors, the person will be required to obtain testing and evaluation for TB from their primary care provider. If they don't have TB symptoms or risk factors, testing will be deferred. And why is this? Because the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, since June 6th, issued a health advisory notifying the public of a 3 to 10 month nationwide shortage of the antigen Aplisol. Now, we don't know what the backstory is, why it takes that long to produce, why they didn't see it in advance. It may be that the company got tired of a company that got, like, was holding the market share, got tired of selling it at a low cost and they wanted to jack the price, or the patent ran out or their permit ran out and they weren't making enough money on it, so they just said, we're out of this. And nobody else really got the word in time to ramp up. Or we refused to import this stuff from a buyer, a company in Taiwan or Thailand or someplace else, Canada, that's producing this stuff at much cheaper rate. But what is the risk to those of us here on Guam, the public, for not having TB testing of everyone who's going to be handling food, of all students, all healthcare workers? If you just fill out a questionnaire and you say, yeah, no, I don't have this, I don't have that, okay, you're good. We're going to leave what we have on the shelf. And we'll only test those people that they come in, they're showing signs. It's nuts. And this is something for the territorial epidemiologist. When you don't test, what happens to the prevalence and outbreaks of TB or any such communicable disease. It's 5:30. It's time to take a break here in our 7th inning stretch, and we'll come back with more right after this.
This is Ronnie. Ronnie is about to break his piggy bank.
Come on, piggy bank.
Ronnie wants to upgrade his smartphone.
And this piggy's gonna help me.
If Ronnie had signed up for GTA's handset payment option, he could have selected a new smartphone with an affordable monthly plan.
I could have what?
Exactly. Sign up for HBO at GTA and don't break the bank.
I'm sorry, piggy bank.
Terms and conditions apply. GTA, we start with you.
Hulu is all your TV in one place, plus more. Watch thousands of hit shows, movies, and award-winning Hulu originals for only $5.99 per month. It's TV without the cable contract and the freedom of on-demand streaming. Get current network shows from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and binge-watch every season of your favorite cable shows. Premium Hulu viewing is brought to you by Proline Automotive and AB Sports, Guam's store for Nike. To advertise on Hulu, call Choice Digital at 989-0042.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
That's the way we want that ball hit. Smack it and send it out of the park. We need more home runs these days, and in the public sphere, you know. Taking a look at the Facebook Live, I see Smug Wimp there. Welcome. Rian Fugan says, shot out. Yeah, you know, I'm not sure if that's shot out or shout out, but, you know, the gal with the dart, you know, got no more darts. Or they got to keep the antigen on the shelf because there's not enough to go around. We don't want to be completely not there. And my blushing bride has joined us. I guess she's tuning in to find out what kind of shirt I'm wearing today. And, you know, I left the house without changing my shirt. I walked out with a old ratty Bahaki T-shirt, and I had to kind of grab something I was going to take to the seamstress to get altered. So that's what I've got on today. And yeah, at least I'm not, you know, sporting my my chest hairs on for those of you on Facebook Live. Did you see this article today in PDN by Anumita Kaur? Build-up project may affect historic property. Well, you know, this kind of thing happens, doesn't it? You propose to build something where maybe there was nothing done there before. And as you go through it, wow, Shazam, there's something there. Didn't know that before. Even though we walked through it, but oops, there's something here. So 2 projects for the buildup are underway at Anderson Air Force Base and Andy South, one of which may affect known historical sites, according to the military. The military posted a memo on August 23rd regarding its Anderson South Urban Combat Training Complex project. Proposed training activities at the complex, according to the memo, may have adverse effect on 4 historic sites and 1, quote, unevaluated cultural resource within the project's area. The complex is being developed to serve the needs of the United States Marine Corps training activities, according to the memo. The proposed activities include combat maneuver training, such as hand grenade and breaching exercises, urban/jungle troop maneuvers, vehicle/convoy course for convoy maneuvers, and fixed/tilt rotor drop zone training. Due to these activities, there is a high likelihood that above-ground artifacts might be dislodged, adversely affecting the integrity of documented historic sites. Data recovery recommended by the military for all data recovery is recommended by the military for all of the Laddie period sites. Further investigation is recommended for the potential Army hospital. Army hospital? There's going to be an Army hospital? This is like news. Or maybe, where was I? Of course there's an Army hospital. Right? I mean, did you know about the Army hospital? Public comment regarding the project will be received until October 9th and can be emailed to Pull up this article. All build-up memos can be found at, and then you can, by clicking Cultural Resources information under the About Us tab. Another memo posted on August 23rd details a water well project at Andersen Air Force Base. Oh yeah, more water. More water. Pump up this stuff because, it just falls out of the sky. May as well catch it. Which will not have adverse effects on any known historic sites, according to the military. The water wells were designed specifically to avoid historic properties, the memo states. A buffer zone is included in planning to allow the contractors to avoid historic properties and threatened and endangered species. The wells would provide approximately 1.2 million gallons of water per day and would be used to support the increase in personnel, facilities, and operations associated with the military relocation, the memo states. Construction work includes site preparation, paving, and construction site improvements, electrical and mechanical utilities, and removal of munitions and explosives of concern. The proposed well field site at Andersen is located near Potts Junction and Route 9. The Guam State Historic Preservation Office, in comments provided to the military and included in the memo, asked that the project be subject to continued monitoring and further surveys, citing the discoveries of artifacts on other build-up sites that were determined to contain no historic sites. Due to, quote, new sites found in areas previously surveyed for the build-up, the inconsistencies and inadequacies of the previous surveys in the area, the subsurface finds and burials located on the plateau, end quote. The Historic Preservation Office, that must be the Guam Historic Preservation Office, asked the military for, quote, a resurvey for this revised project with systemic subsurface testing throughout the area, end quote. Public comment regarding the water well project will also be received until October 9 and can be emailed to, and then take a look at the article, you'll find the address and type it in. Residents can now access build-up related documents and proposals at a Guam Legislature site. Go to guamlegislature.com, index the Guam Build-Up. Accessible under the Directories tab on the front page of the 35th Guam Legislature's website, build-up documents will be continuously compiled and posted for easy access. Both memos described above are also available on the legislature's new database. Well, this is news. It's on page 8. Now, I've worked on those water wells up there in along Route 3A and Route 9. That's when I was working private sector some years back. And I've worked in those sites, and that jungle hasn't been mown down. And if there's something there, it would be not easy to see, but you'll find it once you start pushing bulldozer over it. So, yeah. And I also wanted to point out to you about this, that the definition of historic properties, protections of historic properties, and the procedures to follow when historic properties are discovered in the course of construction, especially of federal projects, is a federal standard. This is not something that the people of Guam are pulling out of their hat, out of their pocket, and imposing on the military. These are federal standards that apply to federal projects, and they are required to comply with applicable federal laws and regulations. So nothing new here. In fact, the Guam offices that implement the federal guidelines on historic properties are 100% federally funded to perform this function right here on Guam. Sometimes they don't do their job so well. And we get surprised. And we get dismayed. And the military goes, what's the big deal? You guys didn't say anything. You know, you guys have to pay attention. Or do you expect us to be doing this job for you? When actually the answer is yes. They're supposed to comply whether they're told to or not. But it's all part and parcel of the federal policy on antiquities, whether it's arrowheads in New Mexico or Iowa, mounds, burial sites, whatever. Anywhere in the U.S., the Alaska Highway, anywhere. If it's got federal money on it, or it's subject to federal review for whatever reason, these laws and regulations and procedures apply. And I just want to make that point, because it's good that we know that these are there, that we have people who are, that first off, the projects are going on. We know the projects are going on, we know that people are looking at them, and that the documents have been posted, and that the military construction people respect the community enough to be right up front with the documents. Say, here, take a look and let us know what you think. This is all a good thing, because we're kind of all in this together. And we definitely need more water. In fact, the water wells I was working on up at Anderson were only part of the overall footprint of I think there were supposed to be 9 wells, and they only end up doing 5 wells. And now that we know how much water is coming out of those 5 wells, we need the 1.2 million gallons likely to be pulled out of the other 4 wells. So I think this is what's going on. I haven't pulled it up, but I will. I'll take a look at that, and we'll talk about this again another time. Let's see. And so, let's restart my... Okay, Ken Leon Guerrero's there online. Welcome. Gary Schoenhall says, Route 9 is a complete mess. Maybe the worst road section on island. Go check it out for a fun time. Actually, that's one of the roads on Guam I avoid riding on my bicycle, because there is no shoulder except a drop-off of about 2 inches onto grass that's about 4 feet wide, and then there's a ditch. So I don't go there, and cars are fast because they've resurfaced the road, but they did not improve the shoulders. And Chris Chip says, you talk like the U.S. government military don't care about what they do? No, they care, but they're also responsible for conserving funds, and they have their mission in mind. They're not responsible for administering the civilian community. They have a mission, they have funding, they have things to do. There is no care or not care in their functions. They do what they do, and if they don't do something, or they don't do it publicly enough, or to the satisfaction of somebody who's got their blood up on the civilian side, it really doesn't affect them. It may be inconvenient for them, but they have to spend that money within the time allotted, and maybe the plans have taken too long to generate, or they have to be updated because they're really old, the plans that they pulled out for the additional 4 wells. Or they were done really quickly, like in the case of Andy South, Marbo. And they went, oh, well, we're going to run into these things. They know that they were there, or they were, and so they do have to pay attention, because it's a matter of local sensitivity, and they are responsible for cultivating good relationships in a different office, cultivating a good relationship with the adjacent civilian community. So it's not a matter of caring. It's what they have to do. They're not in uniform to care. They are in uniform to perform a mission. And I want them to perform that mission. We all do. But governance, public issues, free speech, freedom of movement, federal policy on antiquities. All these things are part of the way that we are as a community, whether it's the national community or the local community. And so the military protects the United States. The United States is the civilian side that's being protected. And so we don't really expect the federal agents, the employees, the functions of the federal government to trample on things that are important to the civilian side. The civilians on Guam are not here at the convenience and service of the military. It is a community under the American flag. And so the military needs to kind of pay. There are people in the military paid to pay attention to these, P's and Q's. And they have to do their job, to avoid friction and to get along with everybody. And if there's something that needs to be done, do it. And it's just doing their job well or not as well. And then, let's see, he says, do you all do? Let's see, do you care about what they do? Do you all do? It shouldn't matter how well we do our jobs as to whether they do their job. They're required to be compliant with federal law, regulations, procedures. It's in the law. They're subject to these laws passed by Congress. They are subject to civilian authority. They're not exempted from civilian authority because they're out here on Guam, and Guam is a federal possession. They're not exempted. And as Americans, civilians, we have the right, the obligation to point out whether laws are being faithfully upheld. And so it shouldn't matter if our leaders down at the legislature are embarrassing us, or the directors at the agencies. My God, it's almost 5. It's 5 o'clock, and what happened? Nobody woke me up, to go home. They're playing tricks on me again. My car is the only one in the parking lot. That is not a standard that the military can say, we only have to meet that standard. Because you guys are sleeping on the job, we don't have to follow this law. They are required to follow the laws. It's law. And they are subject to civilian authority, and that authority is not the government of Guam. The authority is the funding agency back in the states that gave the historic preservation officer the money to enforce the federal law on Guam, even on the government of Guam, which it should do. And if it doesn't, then there are remedies for that. But it doesn't mean that the federal government or the military can slack off and go, hey, you guys don't even enforce this law on your own side. I've seen that in print. It is not a defense for sloppy work. And sloppy, somebody who's in uniform, or NAVFAC civilian, or an engineer contractor doing sloppy work. Just because there's sloppy work done on the outside the fence doesn't mean that you get that there's a lower standard for the United States military on its own military construction projects. Let's see. And it says, you are an expert as to what the military does. Sometimes the civilian authority takes it too far. The civilian authority can only take it as far as permitted under federal law. This is Chris Chip commenting on Facebook. I'm just using the federal standards and saying, this is the standard. And if it wasn't for the historic preservation officer and people who are knowledgeable of what that office is supposed to do, maybe we wouldn't know. And the bulldozers would roll. And you just go out there and pick up the Lusong and take it home with you in the car. Never mind already. Pick up the Laddie Stones and go put it up in front of the BOQ, as a decoration. Never mind if there's a burial there. Let's just clear it so the helicopter can land. This isn't wartime. That happened during the war, right? They didn't have helicopters, but they rolled the tanks, right? Can't help that. But we're not waging war on the civilians of Guam or on the antiquities of Guam. You can take your time. You know, it's even included in the budget for the MILCON, you know, to do all those necessary steps to comply with federal law. So, you know, that's what I'm talking about. An expert? No, I just, you know, I've been there. But I'm not an expert because I'm not in there right now. I'm here with you on Tall Tales, where it's 10 minutes before 6, and we have time for one more break, and then we'll be back with more.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
World Theater Productions presents Mamma Mia at the UOG Calvo Fieldhouse on September 6, 7, and 8. See local and international artists in the biggest on-stage party of the season.
Half a day. This is AJ Raphael.
And Dee Dee Magno Hall. Come and see us in Mamma Mia.
Also presented by Dusatami Guam Resort, Outrigger Guam Beach Resort, and the Plaza Shopping Center. Get your tickets now at WTPGuam.com, GNC, and 76 Circle K.
Oh, welcome back. Thank you very much for sticking with me here. If you're stuck in traffic, well, I'm glad you're with me here on Tall Tales, talking a bit about kind of what's going on in the news. I started on this the other day, and that is Speaker seeks update on cockfighting ban from delegate. You know, I mean, you know how cockfighting is. You know the two chickens, and you got them by the tail, and you kind of poke them at each other, and they'll do what chickens do, right? So the Speaker sent a letter on August 26th to Delegate San Nicolas asking him for an update on his efforts to repeal a provision in the Farm Bill regarding the ban of cockfighting in the territories. And then she's asking also for an update on the discussion from a previous meeting regarding your intent to reach out to the Congressional Research Service. And then there's another letter that was attached from June 25th, where she says, and this is Speaker Barnes to Delegate San Nicolas, and she says in here, I would like to request an update on your efforts regarding repealing a provision in the Farm Bill regarding the ban on cockfighting in the territories. I understand you have co-sponsored H.R. 1189 to repeal Section 12616 of the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018 and other purposes. I recall during a previous meeting we had, you had discussed that you intended to reach out to the Congressional Research Service to determine the legality of such ban enacted after the one-year mark since the passage of the Organic Act. Should there have been any analysis on this issue or a white paper on this matter, I appreciate your assistance in providing these to me. The part that caught my eye is not raising an issue that I'm sure is going to embarrass Delegate San Nicolas if he can't get this done, because of the avid cockfighting proponents and practitioners here on the island. But this is the part that got me. I am eager to work with you to address our mutual interest and our approach of a successful and collaborative Team Guam. That was in the letter from this past Monday. And from June 25th, once again, congratulations, and I am eager to work with you on a Team Guam approach to address issues of mutual interest. But have we been seeing Team Guam approach on anything? And she starts out this way in the June 25th letter. We may have different ideals and mindsets, but we both have the same goal. It's almost like fighting words, but I just had to bring this up to you because it's kind of fun to see politicians be, use formal language to be petty and to bring up important relationships on such minor items affecting all of us here. Chris Chip, a couple minutes here we've got left. He comes right back. He says, as somebody who spent 20 years in the Navy in a variety of places, sometimes the local population can get carried away, and it doesn't matter if it's Guam, Philippines, or Kansas. I have been touchy about all this talk regarding the buildup. Carry on. Yeah, the buildup is important. I'm going to bring in, and thank you, Chris, for your perspective. Yes, absolutely. If you've been in the military, you're going to be sensitive about criticism of the military. If you have been concerned with the way that antiquities on Guam have been swept away in the excitement and enthusiasm of getting things built, whether it's down in Tumon or inside the fence, or the land was given back and then it was taken again, like what happened up at Retidian. It was given back to the original landowners and it was taken back for a fish and wildlife preserve. Well, people are going to get touchy about that. It's part of the family's own history, the extended family's histories. And that's what you're seeing. These issues coming up because federal and military authorities in the past have misplayed these issues. Lacking sensitivity, lacking understanding, not relying on the people within their own offices or who are from here for a little discussion, a little bit of guidance on how to be effective in the long game. And so, there are people walking around town all prickly about it because they've been done wrong. And for those who haven't been made right, it goes down to succeeding generations. This is what Nana said. This is the history of our family. And it gets radicalized down with succeeding generations, which is why I'm so adamant about talking about political status and getting this thing behind us. Not let's make sure we pour cement on this one phrase so that nobody can get past it. This is where we're going to draw our line in the sand. It doesn't fly. Because we're all supposed to be getting along and we're supposed to be improving as we go along. The whole country is supposed to be improving as we go along. On Guam, we're supposed to be improving as we go along. And that's my concern. And all of us have a part in this by the way we talk to each other, by the way we think about what's being spoon-fed to us, challenging our biases from our experiences because we've had bad experiences or good experiences and we don't examine our own bias. And so thank you very much for tuning in to Tall Tales this afternoon. I'm Darrell Taggarty. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon at 4. Tune in for Chris Duenas, who is holding down the fort for Ray Gibson in the morning on The Point from 6 until 9. And we'll find out what's going on. I'll see what I can do about some of the research and writing up some stuff. And I'll bring it back to you tomorrow, along with comments on the news of the day, right here on Tall Tales. Have a good evening and night, everybody.